Io adesso richiamo sul palco invece il presidente Carlo Mescieri che ha un panel importantissimo a proposito del futuro del leasing in Europa. Chiama lei i suoi ospiti e li presenta lei, il palco è suo.
It's time to invite Patrick to join me on the stage. Hi Patrick, thank you very much. And to check if the connection with Guido Borgato works appropriately. Guido, can you hear me?
Indeed, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me as well.
Hi Guido, thanks a lot, thanks a lot, thanks a lot. I'd like to introduce to the audience Patrick and Guido. Patrick is past president of Lease Europe, and currently he is the advisor to the board, and he is a manager still in business. Guido, on the other hand, is the financial attaché, 21 years of Société Générale taught me the right pronunciation, attaché. Giselle, correct? Yes. In charge of, he works for the Italian permanent representative in Brussels, and Patrick is a manager still in business. Guido is the manager in charge of following the development of the banking financial regulation in Europe. So, having said that, the title of this round table, Patrick, frankly speaking, it seems to me, is a cross-border table. Is a cross-border table. Anyway, the title is The Future of Leasing in Europe. The Future of Leasing in Europe. And I'd like to start with Patrick, to whom I am asking at the same time 2 questions, which in my opinion represent 2 sides of the same coin. Patrick, how do you see the importance of leasing as asset funder, in other words, as a financial instrument destined to enterprises to finance their fixed investments? The other side is, the second question is, in your opinion, how do you see new trends, segments in the markets, which will drive leasing in Europe in the near future? 2 questions at the same time, but representing, if you agree, the 2 sides of the same coin. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, first of all, for being invited here. I would like to start with congratulate all supporters of AC Milan with their victory of yesterday evening, because they beat my club. So congratulations. But now back to the serious things in life. As you know, as lessors, we are funding real tangible assets. So we are funding the real economy. And we all know that in Europe we have to catch up. And this has been stressed a few weeks ago with the Draghi report, clearly mentioning that on top of what we already do as investments day to day, we need additionally to invest 800 billion per year to catch up with America and the Southeast Asian tigers. So this means that the pie of assets to be funded is growing, which is positive for us. The pie is growing, but I think that the flavor of the pie will change a bit. And this has all to do with the shift to more environmentally friendly assets. So the assets we are used to finance on behalf of leasing will still be there, but there will be a shift towards more eco-friendly assets, from combustion engine to the electric engine, not only for cars, also for vans, for trucks, but also for cranes and for other industrial equipment. So This is something new, or something which we already see, but which only will accelerate. Also, all type of energy producing, eco-friendly energy producing devices or infrastructure, solar panels, windmills, cogeneration installations, maybe small atom engines, I don't know. But you see there will be a shift in the type and the nature of the assets we will continue to fund. And the third one, important is that it's not only the assets that will change, but also how the assets are offered to the users of those assets. And what we see more and more a trend towards a servitization of the economy. What does this mean? That the traditional model of selling your equipment to a user is gradually replaced by offering those assets in use to your customers. This means that the supplier of the assets need to fund this asset up front, and then he gets paid for the investment in the asset during the lifetime of this contract. He offers to his customer, and this is not only funding, but it is also a maintenance contract and a replacement contract. We know this all since years. That's the typical copier contract, but which will now be generalized not only to those typical assets, but to all type of assets. So this means that there is another way of funding this capex, and it is about how can we match the cash flows from the beginning, the capex, with the inflows of the rentals and the use payments of the users. And then we talk about as a service contracts, pay-per-use contracts, and also the traditional renting and leasing contracts. So this is, I think, three trends. First of all, the cake will be bigger, the flavor of the cake will change, and the way the assets are offered to the customers will change. So what will this mean for leasing? If we look what are the 5 means of funding assets next to funding with own means, you have bank loans, you have leasing and renting, you have public debt, meaning bonds and securitization, you have captives who offer all types of funding, leasing, but also other types of funding to their customers, and you have a little bit private debt, so individual investors who are funding those assets. I think personally, well, everyone will benefit, but the relative position, that's what it is about. I think that the relative position of bank loans will reduce, and that all other four asset categories will benefit from the increasing need to fund assets. Now, who will be the winner? I think, and this is very important for us as lessors to organize ourselves, depends on how we will be able to understand the new risks involved with those new assets and those new ways of offering assets to the users. Because we are, as you know, we are in a business of risk-taking. And there's one golden rule in risk-taking: you can earn a lot of money and do fantastic business, condition that you understand the risks related to your risk-taking activity. And as the assets are changing, as the way is changing, I think we need to invest a lot in understanding the risks related with those new type of doing business and funding assets.
Many thanks. We have listened to the point of view of a manager still engaged in business. Now, I want to go to Guido. Guido, you know that the new commissioner in the mission letter the President, Ursula von der Leyen, stressed the concept that to take advantage a strong financial system, the European Commission must be able to conjugate more resilience, more competitive. So the financial system must be more resilient and more competitive. Considering the implementation of Basel III Plus into CRR3, my opinion is that leasing needs to be treated on a standalone basis due to its structural characteristics and needs to be recognized with a more favorable RWA, more favorable, if possible, compared to the past, but without any doubt compared to the traditional banking loans. Do you agree with this? And if so, what would you suggest doing for leasing industry to get to this goal? Thanks.
Thanks, Carlo, for the question. First of all, thank you, thank Asilea for having me here today. And let me also convey my appreciation for this very interesting initiative, which has been capable of attracting the interest of many practitioners and operators. What you're actually putting on the table is a very, very difficult topic, very difficult question. The prudential treatment of leasing exposures, together with design and calibration. For the sake of everyone's comprehension, before answering your question, let me please take a step back. As you know, and as all participants today know very well, the great financial crisis of 2008 revealed clearly the fragility of our regulatory system at that time, and the importance not only of strengthening it, but also of pursuing the convergence in the way rules are applied internationally. This understanding was fully embraced by both the FSB and the BCBS, who came forward, as you know, with extensive rules for reining in risk in the banking sector across the board. Exactly this year, as you say, the European Commission completed the transposition of such standards, the first among the major jurisdictions, as both the US and the UK are lagging behind. The choice we made as a union together when we were tasked with the implementation of Basel III and 4 was first and foremost to ensure the timely and faithful implementation of the standard. However, and this is the point, at the same time, we also try to follow a future-proof approach, mindful of several needs, not least, and I think these are very important, the need to ensure the proportionality of the framework, the need to ensure that European specificities are duly taken into consideration by the framework, the need to ensure that the soundness of the framework comes without hindering, as you said, the competitiveness of our financial sector, and last but not least, the need to promote effective international level playing field. In my view, leasing is a very lucid example of how 4 out of 5 of these goals have been concretely pursued. As a first step, we as co-legislators decided to remain very faithful, or as faithful as possible, to the Basel standard, including in the way leasing exposure are treated. However, and this comes important part, we mandated the EBA to carry out an assessment precisely aimed at testing the level of risk posed by leasing exposure in Europe, not around the world, but precisely in our union. On this basis, the European Commission will be then able to consider any changes, if possible, if needed, to ensure that the prudential framework and the treatment of leasing exposures remain as proportional as well risk sensitive as possible. To answer your question, let me turn back to that. I'm not very much in the position to advise Lease Europe or Asilea or all the industry in the way it should play its cards. However, to me, the message from the European co-legislators is pretty straightforward. Provide the EBA with all available data, highlight why leasing should be treated differently in Europe, and on this basis, the Commission and the co-legislator will be able to build up and decide the best way forward in light of the principle and the goals I already mentioned. This is not the only area, where the co-legislator decided to keep an open mind, if you want. Allow me this wording. The reasons for that are different, and of course, include the importance of finding the appropriate balance, and balance is a key word here, between the robustness of the framework and its capacity to promote instead of hindering competitiveness in Europe. We need both a financial system, as you know, and at the same time, a competitive financial system if we want to overcome the challenges ahead of us and be up to the task of meeting our ambition in Europe. I hope I answered your question, probably in a more, let's say, open way.
Guido, if I'm not wrong, you report to MEF, Economic and Finance Ministry, correct?
Yes, that's
correct. We will put on the table a request. You should work very close to Ursula von der Leyen, and this would be a real guarantee to be able to combine a financial system more resilient and more competitive at the same time. Thanks. Accept my invitation. Patrick, I come back to you. Considering the implementation of Basel III Plus principles into CRR3, what impact may the implementation have on leasing, and what kind of opportunities and threats do you see from this point of view?
Yeah, it's a challenge to do it smoothly in a smart way. First of all, we need to be aware that the translation of Basel into European legislation is not only a question of capital requirements. It's also setting up a risk framework, and both are important. Let me first handle the first one with respect to capital requirements. Well, it's clear that to lease the same amount of money, we will need to allocate more capital. And especially for those leasing companies who are applying the IRB method, the risk weights will be higher. There is the limit, the output limit. So we need more capital for doing our business. This is, I would say, looking to the result from an absolute perspective. But there are positive things. First of all, we managed with Lease Europe to advocate for leasing, to explain the defensive character and nature of leasing, with as a result that leasing is now recognized as a separate asset class and a separate treatment. And this treatment, although in absolute terms it's worse than before, relatively we are still in a better position from a risk weight perspective compared to other types of funding of assets. So this means that if we put this together, that our relative position compared to alternative funding sources of assets is improving. So this is, I think, only positive, and it's up to us to benefit from this. Second, also important to think about is that there's a new trend. All banks, all bank-related leasing companies have to put everything in policies. What you do, how you do it, it has to be policy-based. With as a consequence that everything which is not in the policy need to be explained or cannot be executed. This, in combination also with, well, the trend of automation of our processes, means and results in a a strategy where we focus on standard solutions, standard assets. And yeah, this means that the non-standard solutions, it will be more and more difficult to fund this within a regulated environment. Now, positive is also that the banks, as far as I am perceiving, the banks are aware of the relative improvement of leasing compared to bank loans to fund assets. So I see a trend within the banks really to support, even to push leasing towards funding of assets. But there's a flip side, another side of the coin, that is that because leasing becomes for banks important, they want to integrate the leasing activity within their traditional organization. Now, we know that the historic dynamic of leasing has been its innovative character, its creativity, and that's a big concern for me. We should be careful when our banks, shareholders are asking to integrate us within this organization. We need to keep our spirit of our historical spirit, because this gives you the dynamic of our market. So yeah, it's pluses and minuses. It's like always threats and opportunities. It's up to us to manage.
Yeah. Patrick, I'd like to tell you that I've appreciated a lot when you underline the fact that CRR3 is not only a matter of risk-weighted asset, but it's also a matter of risk enhancement, and not only credit risk enhancement, all risk, because leasing involved a lessee, a vendor, goods, and the fixed investment.
Exactly.
I agree with you.
We need to be careful and attentive for the performance risk, the residual value risk, all those. But I think we know this, so.
Yes. Finally, back to Guido. Guido, you know that in the last version of the banking package, there is an article, 495.c, second paragraph, which states that risk-weighted asset will be depending on 3 factors and not only one as it was in the past. The counterpart risk, the old factor, counterpart risk, the technical form of the financial deal, and the typology of the lessor. No one has the crystal ball, and no one is in the mind of EBA. You neither, I guess. I guess. But what would you forecast EBA will deliver? Specifically referred to Article 495. Thanks.
Thanks, Carlo. You said it correctly. I don't have the crystal ball for sure. But as you said again, the EBA mandate is very encompassing. On the one hand, the co-legislature, we said, decided to remain very cautious vis-à-vis the treatment of leasing exposures in the CRR. But on the other hand, they open up to the possibility of reviewing such treatment in light of the concrete riskiness of such exposures. The accent in that article, in that paragraph, was posed on 2 aspects. The first is the number of defaults and the realized losses observed specifically in the Union, in order to cater for the specific riskiness of the sector within the Union, instead of using as a reference point, a broader set of data. The second aspect that was highlighted is the focus on exposure associated with different types of properties, leased, and different types of institutions practicing leasing activities in Europe. This was done in order to cater for the biodiversity that characterizes the ecosystem in the European Union. The goal is clear, and I believe the method followed is appropriate. The co-legislator tasked EBA with the responsibility of studying how the leasing is carried out in practice within the Union and what kind of risk it poses concretely, taking into consideration all specificities that characterize this kind of activity. As I said, on this basis, the EBA will be able to provide the European Commission with the most appropriate recommendations in view of ensuring that the prudential framework remains risk-sensitive and proportionate. And so, turning back to your first question, concretely capable of reining in the risk, but without hampering its role for support of the real economy. The expectation is now for the EBA to carry out this thorough analysis with the support and the widest possible involvement of all the leasing industry in Europe and the authorities as well. As happened in Basel, the way leasing exposure will be risk-weighted is going to be based on data, different from Basel, though those data are going to be geographically specific, and the assessment is going to consider also the distinguishing features of the leasing activity in Europe. This is, I think, a very important step, not only for the industry itself, which is at the cornerstone of our economy for its capacity to incentivize growth, innovation, transition, but also for our economy, as this goes precisely in the direction of fostering a strong and competitive financial system. As I say, making forecasts is not easy, and I believe neither appropriate in this context, because I believe this is a really factual matter. If the industry is capable of accompanying the EBA in this exercise, and we succeed in letting the concrete riskiness of leasing exposure to emerge clearly on the basis of robust data analysis, I see no reason why the EBA shouldn't be open to consider precisely what the co-legislator asked it to consider.
Okay. In this situation, normally we say, or it's advisable to say, wait and see. Do you agree? Yes.
Wait.
Yes.
Wait, be active and see.
Yes. Last question to Patrick. Patrick, in your opinion, what's the scenario, what's the landscape that you see from supply perspective? And the supply perspective means lessors, the offer from leasing companies.
Yeah, well, referring to the effect of Basel, as I said, and the needs for assets, so the cake will be growing. Bank-related lessors will focus on the more standard needs, so volume-wise, very positive. But as it is more focused on standard, the risk exists that that type of leasing will become a commodity, and it may have an impact on the margins. So volume plus, margins minus. That's what I expect. And let's call this the bank-served or bank-related served market. This means that you also have an unserved audience, a market that will not naturally be served by bank-related lessors. And there, this will be funding needs which are more complex for non-standard assets or for sub-credit profile customers, but they exist. And there we will see non-bank related players who will offer asset-based solutions and do this on a cherry-picking base. So less volume effect, but more margin effect. And we already see today institutional investors, the big asset managers, who are acquiring stakes in non-regulated lessors, who are funding them and who are investing in those companies. And we see that they can go further than traditional bank-related lessors.
So there is time to take a conclusion. I will try, and then I'll ask Patrick and Guido if they share my point. It's the first time that leasing is in front of a wonderful opportunity. For the first time, European authorities have understood the importance of leasing for the contribution that leasing can give in terms of economic growth, innovation, transition, and factor of risk enhancement. Do you agree? Patrick, Guido? Patrick, do you agree?
I agree, yes. Maybe one point also where Guido was referring to, it's extremely important now that we have data to prove that we are more risk robust than loans. Because this is the pillar of the future, I would say.
Guido, you are the person in charge of following regulation, the development of regulation. Do you agree? For the first time, I have been too strong. For the first time, perhaps, the European authorities have understood the importance of leasing. Do you agree?
That's for sure. But let me answer by paraphrasing a famous motto: with big opportunities comes also big responsibilities. So it's very much up to the industry to, let's say, escorting and accompany the European Union in this development, because left alone, big opportunities can also end up being not up to the task or up to the ambitions we have. So it's really important if everybody, the system, the Italian system, is capable of pursuing this common goal. It's not only you, the Italian Perm Rep, it's the system together that should, let's say, advocating to the EBA and then advocating to the European Commission for what is the common goal. Having a leasing industry capable of financing the economy, this is the ultimate goal in my view. And so I really agree with you, Carlo. Thanks.
Okay, so what's left? We have to keep our fingers crossed, for sure. And I'd like to thank Patrick and Guido and to invite the audience to express satisfaction for their contribution. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.